Do you want to learn how to get retired, stay retired, and enjoy your life to the fullest? This is the Retire Happy Podcast with certified financial planner professional Jeremy Finger. Jeremy will be your guide to happiness as he discusses the art and science of retirement, breaking down the complicated information to help you make good financial decisions without worry or burden. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to Retire Happy with Jeremy Finger. Jeremy, what's going on, man?
Hey, Eric, how you doing? It's all going well. Just going to try to spread some love, spread some knowledge today.
All right, let's do it. I love today's topic. I mean, this is 5 phases of retirement, and the stuff that you're covering today, I don't think a lot of people have heard or don't even know about.
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about the math. Think that everything's a math problem, but we're not computers. We're human. Last I checked. So there's a lot of things that go on that aren't necessarily a math problem. Yeah.
And I mean, it's true. And I think that that's what most advisors focus on, right? It's like, okay, we're going to get the math down, but they kind of lose the person a lot of times. And so I love that you're addressing this.
Yeah. I think it's that's one of the things we go over that I can't see. It kind of catches people off guard a little bit. Okay. So, everybody wants to go over the X's and O's, and that's fine. Do you have enough money, needs versus wants, tax planning, Social Security optimization, all that's fine. But they fail to realize the other stages of retirement.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this. You got 5 phases of retirement. What's phase number 1?
Phase 1, we've already talked about it. The retirement transition. Hey, do you have enough money? Where are you going to get the money from? How do you optimize Social Security for your needs? Do you have net unrealized appreciation, rollover 401ks, taking care of mom, whatever the case may be? The structure to get things going. That's the retirement transition. And most of the podcasts out there, most of the financial data out there talks about that math. And matter of fact, guess what? I talk a lot about that on my podcast, and certainly a lot of blogs that we produce. But that leads us to stage 2, which is really the leisure phase. So it's hey, great, I am done with work. I am sailing off into the sunset, or whatever that sunset is for you. Sometimes it is sailing off into the sunset. Sometimes it's starting a garden. Sometimes it's traveling the country, whatever the case may be. And that is the leisure phase.
Okay. And that sounds pretty good. I'll be honest. That sounds really good. I like the idea of, well, first of all, I like water. We've talked about that. So I wouldn't mind, doing some extra scuba diving or getting on a boat and just enjoying fresh air, salt water, and or lake water. Either way, fishing, all that. That sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. And a lot of times people, they're like, well, my vacation's short. This is a permanent vacation. So, playing golf or whatever the case may be, the honey-do list. I got some projects I want to do. I want to catch up on some reading. But what they find is that after a while, they may transition into the third phase, which is the languishing phase. Have you ever heard anybody talk about that?
Not in those terms. I mean, I know that boredom, right? Boredom can set in. You don't have a routine. You lose some things. But right. What do you mean by languishing phase?
Well, you kind of touched on it. So typically after a little while, retirees may start to languish, and they're like, well, hey, what am I going to do today? I don't have a schedule. I don't have an agenda. And this is really times where divorce rates spike, and they double among retirees. During this phase, they have a loss of identity, loss of mental stimulation. Sometimes depression can set in because they don't have the structure around work, and they go straight from work to retirement, and that can be a bit drastic. And so, and this is where a lot of where people can end up languishing.
Well, the other thing is that I think that we've seen, well, I know that there's multiple studies out there, but one of the things that also happens is that people without that schedule They're going to sit down and read the newspaper in the morning, and then they're going to transition from reading the newspaper in the morning. They're going to go sit in their chair for a while and watch some sports, or they're going to watch, a movie or two or whatever. And I've heard it said, and I can't confirm this, I'm not a doctor by any means, but I've heard it said that sitting is the new smoking. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before.
I have heard that recently.
Right.
Matter of fact, I'm sitting now. So does that mean I'm smoking a pack a day? I don't know.
But I mean, but the thing is that you came into the office today, right? You went to work. You got up off your butt and moved someplace. And at the end of this podcast, you're probably going to get up and go do something, meet with a client or whatever. Without that just regular, I mean, it sounds silly, but that in itself is exercise. It's movement. I imagine people's health declines. You were talking about mental stimulation and all these other things. But at the same time, I think people probably, as they first retire, they start to gain some weight because they're not moving as much. I mean, if you cut your movement down by half each day, how many calories are you not burning? And I'm sure while you're sitting there, you're eating, because I would be.
I probably eat more on the weekend than I eat 5 days.
Exactly. So there's got to be something that you look forward to that helps you to continue to stay active. And it sounds silly to say it, but I think it's nice to sit down and relax every once in a while, but when that's all you do all day, that's a problem.
Yeah. And I heard this one time, someone was saying that leisure's only leisure when you have it combined with work, but when it becomes only leisure, then that becomes work. So that may seem a little counterintuitive, but it's only a break if you have it something against something else. And so what a lot of people do is they transition from the languishing phase back to the learning phase or to the learning phase. And that is where, hey, maybe the number one thing that retirees do after retirement is go back to work, but they go back to work on their own terms, Eric. They may focus on the things they really enjoy doing and are good at, and do a lot of and don't do the things that they're not so good at. So maybe that's working 2 or 3 days a week instead of 5, or working 4 days a week instead of 5. Or I've got clients who I got one client who takes Wednesdays off. Every Wednesday he goes fishing, and guess what he does? He hires a boat cabin. He doesn't want to bait the hook. He doesn't want to mess with the boat. When he is out there, he is totally 100% dialed in to what he enjoys. And that gives him time. So to not worry so much and prep and do all the things that he doesn't want to do. And that's just one of many examples of what people can do that not necessarily full bore retire, but retire with kind of training wheels. Okay. I've also seen retirees that in the languishing phase transitioning into the learning phase, take classes online. I mean, there's websites like lynda.com, lynda.com, or Khan Academy. You can search over 7,000 different online courses to take a course on anything you can possibly imagine. And that brings into some stimulation to kind of keep the mind active.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard of those websites. So I'm hoping that we can add those as links in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So that people can click on those and check those things out.
Yeah.
I think that, again, being a lifelong learner is incredibly important. Again, that mental stimulation you're talking about. What are you seeing when hobby-wise? I'm just curious. Clients that you've been working with, what have they started? I know that you and I have actually talked about this off air before, that sometimes hobbies can turn into more than that, meaning, you can turn a hobby into a part-time income just because you enjoy doing something. Doesn't mean you can't get paid for it. Personally, I love to build fountains, and I've only built fountains for, family and myself. And just because, again, I love water, right? I love the sound of running water, but I could absolutely see that being something that I would transition into because I just enjoy doing it. And if I can get paid for it on the side, just a day or two a week, I think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah. And an extremely high growing area of entrepreneurship, retirees. Believe it or not. Yeah. I talked with this person called in off the website, and they're going to get a windfall. And he is in accounting business. And believe it or not, Eric, guess what he wants to do? He wants to become a landscaper.
Yeah.
He wants to drive around and he cuts people's grass and plant stuff. And that's what he wants to do. Obviously he's taking a pay cut, but it's not about the pay. It's about what he wants to do, what he enjoys. And that gives him something to do on his own terms. So retirement doesn't necessarily mean retiring, sitting in the rocking chair. Retire can just be a transition into the learning phase, into a phase of life that you do in your own terms.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that is going to really increase people's happiness, right?
That's right. That's right. And so there's a number of things that people need as far as to make sure that they are living their best life and they're being happy. Social stimulation, having meaningful relationships, and even in retirement. A lot of times people, I've seen this before where people are retired or a spouse passes away and they're very lonely. And as much as a lot of people want to stay in their own home, they if they end up making the transition to a nursing home, they all of a sudden become happier because all the social stimulation that's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you got mental stimulation. That would obviously like the lynda.com, learning a little bit about business, doing landscaping, for example. They're building fountains, whatever floats your boat is okay. Being physically active and also having a purpose. Okay. Having a purpose, for example, giving back to the community, whether that be civic organizations, whether that be mentoring. There is a company out there called SCORE, SCORE, and you can mentor people in your area of expertise and give them back. And if you're able to cover those aspects of it, generally you're going to be a lot happier. And then that is the final phase. That is the living your best life phase.
Yeah. Well, and I want to touch on something that I don't think we've brought up yet, is that for married couples, when it's retirement time, when you're used to going to the office and being separated for 40 to 50 hours a week, then all of a sudden being around each other all the time, that can be stressful. That can be difficult. And my parents are still married. They've been married for over 50 years, and I love that. But there was a point where my dad's like, yeah, I'm going to go get a job at Walmart. And he did. And did they need the money? No. But it got him out of the house like 3 days a week. And I knew it was for his own, a little bit of separate time. Mom and dad get some separate time alone. They get to do their thing. My mom makes jewelry at the kitchen table as a hobby, just for fun. Gives most of it away, but she's in her zone, right? So dad goes and does this. Now he's done at Walmart. It isn't like that. So then he starts volunteering at a food pantry just to get out of the house a couple times a week. He's 82 years old, but having that away time, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that people think, oh, we're retired, we're going to be spending all this time together. It's going to be wonderful.
Right.
Yeah. Put a pin in that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Everybody. That's good. It's not just for retirement.
It's true. This is true.
It's making sure that each spouse has got something that's theirs and that they enjoy, and they're stimulating their mind, and so that's often better for the relationship as well. Absolutely. And that's really why the divorce rate doubles in retirement. Because a lot they're unaware of these types of obstacles that can happen in the languishing phase. But that's part of it. I mean, it would be taking care of grandkids. In some instances, not taking care of grandkids too much. I've seen people I've seen parents move away, from their children to have a little bit more alone time with their spouse and do the things that they want to do. And they get tired of that and they move back. I mean, I live in Myrtle Beach, so people are moving here all the time in droves. And guess what? People are moving back all the time in droves. So because they realize that, hey, maybe I need to spend more time with the kids or grandkids. And it's okay. It's not like there is a finite way to do this. But one thing is for certain is that keep learning. Keep trying to figure out what's best for you, what's best for your spouse, what's best for your family. So when you're sitting there at the end of life and you're looking back and in how you spent the last 10, 20, 30 years, you said you can say to yourself, well, you gave it a go. You did everything that you could to live your best life. And that's really what matters.
Yeah. I do want to touch back on number one though, because everything you've talked about, it's not possible without number one. So I just want to reflect on that for a minute, because you said something that was spot on. So my parents retired down to Costa Rica. That's, they had retired. My dad retired early. He was able to get everything and retire at 55. So that was awesome. It was great. And they started a rhododendron farm. They did all these different things. And then, it was just kind of cold and dark, then Washington State, and my mom needed more sunshine. So they decided to retire down to Costa Rica, and they were down there for like 5 years, Jeremy. And it was beautiful. We got to visit them a couple times. Gorgeous. Every day, just beautiful. Loved the environment. Fresh vegetables, fresh fruits, good stuff. But after 5 years, it was time to come back, right? They wanted to be closer to the kids and not necessarily me, but the grandkids for sure, right? They wanted to be closer to the grandbabies.
Right.
And they knew that it was just, they didn't like being able to see the grandkids twice in 5 years. So they actually moved close to us, and it's been a blessing. We love being close to them, but exactly what you're talking about. And without number one, without making sure all the mechanics of the retirement, all the finances are in order, and you can do that kind of planning, you may not be able to. I just don't want people to be stuck. Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah. So let me give you a couple points there. The first point is that I mean, if you don't do the things right, guess what? You're not even going to have the options for other ones. All right. You're not going to have the options. Right. So making sure that you do the planning steps right, saving enough money, optimizing all the things that you possibly can do within the rules of the game today, and the rules change. So making sure you're flexible in that regard is going to put more odds in your favor for being able to transition into the leisure phase and have options and flexibility. That's the first thing. The second thing is that things do change. I'm talking about emotionally speaking, like your parents, they moved down to Costa Rica, and, they're spending time down there, and, and they were getting away. Right. And then they realized, hey, maybe we want to do something different. And they got their feel of this, and they want to move back. And that's not unusual. That is not unusual. But I've seen people who transition and languish in the third phase and really never snap out of it. They don't know why. They're, I made it. Here I am. Now it's supposed to be all peaches and cream and rainbows and butterflies. But without some type of giving back, without some type of meaningful relationships, without some type of mental stimulation, they lose a sense of meaning that, guess what, they may have gotten during their work, even though they may not like work. They may have been given those components of their life while they were working, and now they don't have that. Yeah. But you're not trapped. I mean, you got options to go back. You can go back, but on your own terms, whatever that may be.
Yeah. Well, I think your own attitude about your time, I think is a huge, huge issue. We used to volunteer at a retirement facility, and there was one woman in particular that she always dressed up just to the nines, right? But she was always angry. Just always angry. And I asked one of the workers, what's going on? We're trying to get her engaged in games and bingo and things that we're there to do. And she just did not want to talk to anybody. And it was because she had lost her husband, and her kids didn't want her at their house, quote unquote. But she was in a beautiful place. And I'm not saying that it would fit everybody, but she refused to make friends there. And I think it was just her own attitude of, these things have been done to me. I've lost A, B, and C. And that's tough, but people have to be able to understand that you've got to move past that. Loss is part of life. We know that. But there's so many opportunities to build those relationships and have those interactions and do something else and give back, that if you just focus on one thing, one negative thing that happened to you, like you said, people get stuck in that languishing phase. I think that's where people get stuck, just because they don't want to move on to what could be a really, really amazing time for them.
That's right. That's right. There, of course, there's probably heard this said in many different ways. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy.
Oh yeah.
The good news is that we can have the power to change that if we want.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do, it's an inward journey. It's the forgiveness, things like that, that allows us to be more freer, to be able to see the beauty that's still out there. Right. And so many times, and this isn't just for retirees, this is for everybody for that matter, but I see the unhappiest people feel like they're a victim. And the happiest people understand that things happen in this world, and that's fine. I will not let that define how I live the rest of my life. And they look to live a better life, and they live that better life every moment. Okay. It's not like all of a sudden I'm going to retire and then I'll be happy. Because guess what? As soon as you're there, the carrot moves. And so going through the process of focusing on what's important, letting go of what's not important, and enjoying these moments, is really how you live your best life to and through retirement, truth be told.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, this has gotten pretty deep on this podcast today, but I've got another question for you. I'm gonna put you on the spot here.
Sure.
I know that you work with the sandwich generation, folks that have parents that are retired and they're maybe approaching retirement. But how do you help counsel, if you will, the folks that are in that 55 to 60, 65 range that have parents that are still alive, that they can, maybe their parents are struggling, right? How do you help them, kind of help guide their own parents to have a more fulfilled retirement as they're even looking at their own retirement?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, some people take it better than others, right? Just that's kind of normal, but the doing what you can, having the conversations. Okay. So if there's an elephant in the room, guess what? Address the daggum elephant.
Yeah.
So, hey, mom, you're up north. Would you like to move down here? Or, hey, start asking the questions. If you look back on your life in the next, let's say 5 years from now or 10 years from now, looking back on today, what would you want to have done to live your best life possible?
Yeah.
Is trying to think forward in your life and living in and looking back at that and saying, hey, did I do everything that I could? And a lot of times it's made up stories, hey, this person did this to me and I'm resenting this. And that's just like, if you're trying to swim, that's like holding on to an anchor.
Yeah.
It's, hey, how about drop the anchor and just say, let's see if we can get past this and make amends for these relationships and be a little bit more freer. So in the sandwich generation, yeah, it's taking care of your kids or making sure they can fly on their own, having conversations with your parents and seeing how they are, and also checking in with yourself, checking in with your spouse. These are not easy conversations, but sticking your head in the sand isn't going to make it any better.
Yeah. Well, I really wanted to bring that last question up because you've already given such great information and the links that we're going to have in the show notes, the classes, the different things that people can get mental stimulation from. I think a lot of older folks, and I know that this has been true in my parents' case, sometimes they just don't think that they can take on something else. They can learn something new. And these are fantastic resources. So not just for the listener, but for the listener, your parents could take advantage of this. This is a great way to start that conversation and say, hey, look.
100% the case. 100% the case. And true story, no joke. My dad, he had me late in life. He was in his early 70s taking computer classes in the 1980s. So I've seen firsthand how people taking on new things later in life. And that's gutsy. And it doesn't mean you're going to be a computer programmer, but give it a go, and it's okay. There's no judgment. You know?
Well, listener, here's the thing is that we do have a limited amount of time for these podcasts, and we're about to wrap this up. But Jeremy is always open to conversations. I mean, him and I talk all the time. And I know that he would be more than happy to explore this issue with you, whether you are, approaching retirement or in retirement, or you have parents that are retired and you'd love a little bit of guidance helping them to be more fulfilled in their scenario. So, Jeremy, why don't you give them some contact information so they can reach out?
Yep. You can contact us here at the office at 843-970-1049 or Jeremy, Jeremy, at riverbendwm.com.
Fantastic. Jeremy, again, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time today, sir.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
You bet. Our last thank you is always for you, the listening audience. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the Retire Happy podcast with Jeremy Finger. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jeremy comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. And we humbly ask that you share this podcast, rate it, and leave a review, as this actually does help other people find the show. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Riverbend Wealth Management, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Happy podcast with certified financial planner Jeremy Finger. If you have any questions, please visit us at www.riverbendwealthmanagement.com or call us at 843-970-1043. And remember, click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available.
Investment advice offered through Stratos Wealth Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor doing business as Riverbend Wealth Management. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.